Amna Shabbir, welcome to the Lean Out podcast. How are you doing?
I am doing well and so excited to be here, Dr. Baker.
Me too. It's been exciting to get to know you, and I want the audience to do the same. So, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work life balance these days and how it might be different from other people in your profession?
I am a physician and I am also a master certified coach. I am a mom. I was going to lead with something different than a physician, but I did that again. So it's okay. I'm a podcaster. I'm enamored with all things perfectionism these days. I recently gave a TEDx talk, which we might get into on the subject. And where I find myself truly under all the roles and labels right now is in this space of creativity where I'm working on my book and really just exploring what the next chapter of my life looks like while also managing all these different roles. You talked about balance. So I think that balance has been precarious for me, especially as a perfectionist, as somebody who is surrounded by this notion. I feel like when the word balance comes up, it becomes difficult. Then, when I take my perfectionism and extrapolate it to conversations surrounding balance, because now everything else has to be this perfect symphony and harmony, and has to be this specific way. So I had to step away and do a little bit of releasing surrounding that. So currently, what balance really looks like is being self-aware of my needs and being aware of the needs of the little humans that are around me. I have two daughters. And so being relationally present while also managing what the world requires, what adulting requires from me is how I would define balance for myself in this season of life.
I love that you just went ahead and defined balance for yourself because sometimes this is a question that I ask people. And when I took a crack at defining balance, I actually used that musical analogy that you used. And it's interesting to me from the perspective of someone who sees himself as a perfectionist that you chose to use that terminology, but also say that you're releasing the idea that it's this perfect symphony. Because I used to play music when I was a kid. I was in the orchestra, I played cello, and there can be symphonies that are really harmonious and like perfect. But there are also these modern pieces that people have written where it's kind of almost like a cacophony. They're just like crazy sounds. And I really see balance that way. And I love that you use that term. Tell me a little bit more about your recent releasing of perfectionism and what that has looked like for you.
I really appreciate the word releasing, and I'm still struggling. And if the audience members who are listening to this amazing show have their thoughts, I would love to hear those in the comments about what comes up when I use the word releasing perfectionism or recovering perfectionist. So I try not to put things in very absolute or definite terms because I feel it's really easy with the current self-help industry to fall into that trap, that as if there is some invisible proverbial line that we cross. And then I'm on the other side and, oh, look at me, by the way, I am no longer a perfectionist. And I think that just makes everything so much worse. When we say those things, we in fact are gaslighting ourselves as well as gaslighting the people who, if they follow your advice, will not feel good, because that's just not how life and healing works. And so this has definitely been a journey for me. And in this whole process, when I look back at my life, like, why perfectionism? Why this word? And why am I so specifically focused on it? The one thing that ties together my entire lived experience has been this consistent expectation of perfectionism that I completely, wholeheartedly internalized from a very young age. And then you go into medicine, that is the norm, right? We are supposed to be perfectionists. Our oath is do no harm. It's not try not to do no harm. And when we say do no harm, in effect, we dehumanize ourselves because as human beings, we're prone to err. And so for me, it was just this, first of all, this process of gradual awareness. Wow, look at all the places and spaces that I am expected to be flawless, and how I have completely imbibed it to the point that when I was deep, deep in burnout, deep in postpartum depression, I felt I was unable to ask for help because asking for help meant admitting I was not perfect. Asking for help meant I could not do it all. And so it's this recognition and this awareness that has happened over years on multiple levels, and it still continues to show up. And so the most important part is after awareness, what are you going to do? You're going to try and reground yourself, re-anchor yourself to whatever mode of balance or self-care, whatever that looks like for you. But if you, as Marian Edelman says, you can't be what you can't see. And so when you are a perfectionist surrounded by perfectionists who are glorifying perfectionism, because we just look at the tone we use to describe perfectionism. We say, oh, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, you know, haha, and then we move on. And so it's like we have to recognize the air that we're breathing right now, and we're kind of doing this to each other as well. So stepping away, taking a deep breath, generating self-awareness, and then re-anchoring has really helped me kind of move forward.
I love that. So, was there a moment in your life, like you talked a little bit about postpartum depression, and I remember hearing you talk at the Brave Enough Women Conference just a month or two ago about the idea of like who has light on their depression screen and that kind of thing, and getting into that whole idea that like perfectionism is something that is a problem that people don't see as a problem. It's like, oh, I'm too perfect, or I'm too much of a perfectionist, and it's kind of like this fake self-deprecating thing. So was there a moment for you, or like a turning point where you decided I need to address this in my life, or I need to fix this?
I think that when you try all kinds of different ways to feel better and none of it works, then you start asking those deeper, harder questions. Why is what I'm trying to do not working? Why is my body and my mind not complying together? And so maybe there were what I called micro awakenings to then macro awakenings. And so this was an entire journey, whether it was happening while I was an early career physician, while I was a resident, but I think that the sheer fatigue that I felt, even as I transitioned in complete transparency from my role as a full-time clinician to then becoming an entrepreneur, I was like, why? Why am I not completely feeling better? And so I had to step away and realize that the yearning and the desire to be absolutely perfect, whether it was to show up, you launch a business, you're supposed to show up a specific way online, whether it is that, whether and I'm saying it out loud because I'm trying to be and model what I'm trying to preach. I know many amazing humans and many women entrepreneurs are thinking the same thing, like, I can't look like that, or I can't be like that. There was this expectation that if you are, for example, helping people through coaching, or you're doing some other kind of creative activity, your online profile should look a certain way, you should be a certain way. And so on one end, I'm trying to be better. And then in parallel, like, life is unfolding. And so I think it truly hit me about a year and a half ago where I realized that this absolute, absolute requirement to be flawless and to have it all figured out at all times has left no space for me to breathe, no space for me to learn, no space for me to grow, no space for me to collaborate in the way that I would like to. And so that is perfectionism through and through. And that's where I felt like, okay, now I am actively going to start my unfolding, unbecoming, unsilencing, and like losing yourself to find yourself. And so I think there were many moments, but this recognition of I really am actively holding myself back, and also the perfectionism was feeding into the workaholism, because that's what I did in medicine, right? So there is no doubt the system that we work in is horrifying, the traditional medical system, and moral injury is something I continue to struggle with. Uh, in waves, it would get better, it would get less, but it's always been there when I worked in the traditional healthcare system. It's hard not to have moral injury, but burnout is something that I was able to work around after changing my work environments, making consistent decisions. But then when you operate under the guise of perfectionism and you bring in that same thing that you think, by me working hard and consistently striving, I'm going to reach some proverbial flawless moment, and then everything will be okay. So it's an amalgamation of the arrival fallacy. It's the amalgamation of the sunk cost fallacy. It's the amalgamation of like, you bring a thing and I will show you where perfectionism continues to show up. And so as I thought that, wow, what had led me to feel terrible in medicine in a lot of ways was also this workaholism that I'm now bringing into entrepreneurship. And so what's the point of it? And so after doing all these different things, I realized, yeah, the underlying theme among everything has been just perfectionism. And so then the unbecoming, the bigger question, Don, that you asked was, well, we don't want to let go of our perfectionism because we think that that's what makes us who we are. That's what made me a physician. So while I don't like to pathologize things completely, and I don't want to throw it away like it didn't help me or didn't serve a purpose, but then it became really bad. And so we have to realize maybe we're confusing terminologies. Maybe this is not perfectionism. This is something called excellentism. You can dream big and do whatever you want. And I continue to do that. I am not settling. I am just, I'm just done beating myself up. That is what it is.
Mm. Yeah. So this idea that you spent some time on becoming, what did that look like? What kind of practices did you do? What kind of resources did you tap into initially to get that moving?
Yeah. I would say healing is multimodal. And if we decide that it's not, then we're really constricting ourselves. Whether it is, when I step back and I look at my entire journey, the first thing that was absolutely necessary was asking for help. You mentioned that I lied on my PHQ-9, which is something I talked about in that in the conference. And so, yeah, I had to stop lying. I had to first accept what was happening. Why was I feeling so bad? And I had to ask for help. And that started with pharmacotherapy in that moment. That was then paired with counseling. And coaching has been a very powerful presence in my entire trajectory, like professional, personal. I can't envision my life the way it is right now, how wholesome it is without having had access to my coach. And the way I look at it is very simple. When you invest in help, you get an ROI. It's very simple. And anyone who has had serious dreams and achieved serious things in life has asked for help. And often, if, as I absolutely agree, I am privileged to actually invest in help, has gotten the help that they need. Like we can't imagine athletes performing the way they do without investing in their coach. And so whether it was having my physician coach, whether it was having my non-physician coach, whether it was getting help with my TEDx coach, like it was all of those moments, because what they did was really call me out on my own BS. Like all my blind spots and my BS and what was holding me back, it just came right, like it was up there for me to see and for me to address. And I really appreciated that. That really fast tracked a lot of my healing, I would say. So for anyone listening who's been on the fence to getting help, asking for help, pick up the phone, click the button, do the first thing. And so community creation and asking for help has been a big, big component. And then recognizing that my body needs love just as much as my mind. And we constantly focus a lot on what are the mindset shifts that we can get? How can we think different? How can we rewire our brain? That's a lot of thinking. Well, sometimes you have to take your body with you. Sometimes, as all these high achievers that we are, but really truly recognizing I need to love and I need to honor my body and working with my trainer on that specifically, but more so my intention um, on how can I do that. And so I think movement has been a really big part of that healing journey as well. So movement, connection, asking for help, and then in this process, realizing how patient I need to be with myself and how patient I have to be with this whole situation, because I would enroll in a program. And so, for the people listening, if you're thinking by the end of the conversation, you should be cured from your perfectionism, that right there is my invitation for you to just slow down and allow time and patience for healing.
Yes, it's a continuous process. These things, work life balance, confidence building, perfectionism, and releasing yourself from that. It's not something that you can do. And I mean, for that matter, also being healthy, having a healthy body, moving your body, progressing or getting stronger in a physical way. All of these things are things that you cannot just like do in a month period and do some sort of like detox and just fix. And unfortunately, we are a society and we're human beings that like want things to just happen quickly. And especially people that are high achievers. They're used to seeing things happen when they put in the effort. And for these things, the process is so much slower. And I think that is a really good point to bring up. I love that you brought that up. Tell me about the TED Talk that you did on perfectionism. Talk a little bit about that process, what it was like to do, and also why you decided to do a TED Talk.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Dawn. And I really appreciated your earlier reflection as well. Um, for me, actually, my coach asked me this question: what would the 8 and 80-year-old you be proud of? And so, one of the things that I had always wanted was to share something of impact. And so, as I was deep, like talking, I don't want to use the word obsessing, but really, there was a moment where I was just like, wow, I really want people to know how bad perfectionism is and how much we glorify it. Like, literally, that was just a very simple statement. And so I just sat with that and I realized when I talk about impact, I want to reach more people. Okay, so how do I reach more people? Um, well, we could sit somewhere and we could talk, and then and obviously, you to reach more people, just number wise, more than one-on-one setting, you need a larger speaking situation. So I did a couple of talks on the topic of perfectionism, and in this time frame, when I started talking, everyone started responding, and I just felt so. It was so humbling to hear everyone's responses. Like truly, it was. I felt so connected to every human that has shared their experiences with me. I feel like they have poured into me and they've validated me. So in this process, like this, it started with this small idea, reaching out to people, talking, thinking about impact. And then slowly I realized, okay, well, I want to actually study this a bit more. So I curated and I created this whole way in which I could actually interview researchers, people who have done lab research, people who have lived this journey, and which is what I sort of wanted to like know what is my idea worth spreading. Like I in that time I said, okay, well, one of the biggest ways that you can actually reach an audience is by getting on that TEDx stage. And when I said it, I was so afraid. Like even as I say this right now, it seems so surreal. We're recording this right now and I still have goosebumps. I can't believe this actually happened. So I said, okay, well, what if I actually gave a TEDx talk? Yeah, they have a huge platform. It's online. It could reach many people. So it was not the whole thing that I really want to emphasize is TEDx talks are very different than any other talk we will ever give. And I think more people, more high achievers, more physicians, more medical professionals should actually approach that stage and share their wonderful ideas, but recognize it's not about you. It's about the idea. It's about the idea worth spreading. It wasn't about Amna and her image and all of that. And so whatever ego I had at the start of the process just quickly evaporated and continue. I feel like I have become more grounded in this process than I have ever been in my entire life. And that has been one of the biggest rewards that I could have ever gotten, more than maybe the actual talk. So I decide the process and then, okay, I am researching and multiple things are happening parallel behind the scenes. And I feel really alone and I feel very impostery and I feel like I don't belong. I'm talking about perfectionism. I'm not Brene Brown. What am I going to add? And so in that process, I realized I needed some help. I needed some help because I do think that the message that I was trying to share was different. My angle was different. What I was trying to communicate was different. What I was trying to offer as a solution was different. But I really was struggling to believe in me. And that's why I was so lucky to get connected with my TEDx coach, and we worked together up until the day and even after I delivered the talk. It was sort of an out of body experience. Um, it was really, really circling surrounding the message, surrounding presence and grounding yourself, and coming from a space of service. How can you reach people? How can you share with other humans? And how can you take something complex and scrunch it in 10 minutes? My talk is 10 minutes, 31 seconds. But it was supposed to be 10 minutes. But thankfully the organizers didn't say anything to me. Yeah. So that's what it was like.
Um, we talked a little bit before we started recording that I have considered doing a TED Talk, but then I kind of shelved it like multiple times. And just listening to you talk about this and the personal growth and fulfillment that you got from doing it makes me want to revisit it. And so thank you for sharing that. And I think that anyone out there, if you're considering it, there are a lot of support mechanisms out there now for helping people get TED Talks, different services and coaches that are helping people to both get them scheduled and land them, and then also formulate them and get through the whole process. So it sounds like you used someone like that and that you highly recommend having that support.
I highly recommend having that support. I did an episode with my own coach on my podcast, Success Reimagined, if anybody wants to tune in. I really recommend that because if you feel deeply called to something, again, it's not about you and brand building. There are lots of other amazing stages that I'm an entrepreneur. Like I completely agree. For business growth, there are going to be a lot of different stages. But if there is something that you feel called to on a very higher level that is tugging at you and you want to share it with us, please do. And the TEDx stage is really great for that. But sometimes it's also hard to tease that out. Like as a scientist, as a high achiever, how do you then bring in storytelling? There's an art to it. So I'm really glad that I connected with my coach. Her name is Tara Lafongood. She's wonderful. So and she really like helped me bring what was going to be like a 1 hour talk into like 10 minutes, first of all, and then continuing to iterate, iterate, iterate. And then if you have an idea right now that you're noodling on and you don't feel ready, that's okay. Like I feel like that with my book. I'm working on my book. And well, I announced the book way before I talked about the TEDx talk. But it's a process and I am iterating and I am figuring it out because it's creativity. And I don't want to rush and then yet again turn this into like a checkbox. Don't do this if this is a checkbox. Do it with inspiration and with love. And if you are thinking about it and if you have an idea, it would be so fabulous to hear that. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the book too, because when I was looking at doing a TEDx talk, I started watching webinars and just kind of consuming free information at the start. And one of the ones that I watched was how to turn your TEDx talk into a book. And that was how I actually shifted to the book. And I did my book first. And so now maybe I need to go back and do the other. And you're doing it the opposite way, and you've been working on your book. And I do want to actually ask you too, you've said a couple times that you've made this transition to entrepreneurship. So, what kinds of things are you doing now in the entrepreneur space? You are not doing clinical medicine anymore. Is that correct?
So I am on a clinical sabbatical. If I would say I've stepped away from medicine, I haven't. And this is probably the first platform that I'm actually announcing that because up until a couple of months ago, I was still working part time as an internal medicine geriatrics physician. I was working in nursing homes and rehab facilities. It was time to take a break because I continued to get exposed to moral injury I just needed to step away. So the clinical medicine part, I would say after not doing it for a couple of weeks, and now this would be as we record probably the third or fourth month right now for with another sabbatical. I miss my patients. I miss seeing them. I actually want to do something interesting, but more to come on that, what that would look like. And so 2026 is going to be that year and hopefully. But if not, that's okay too. So what I'm trying to communicate over here is allowing yourself the space to heal and come up with what aligns. And then as far as the other stuff goes, I am the founder of Early Career Physicians Institute that does a lot of advocacy work for physicians, as well as offers one-on-one coaching, some like free resources, as well as group coaching, working with organizations. And then my other business is Success Curated, where I primarily at this time am working on those elements where I help high achievers create sustainable success, whatever that looks like for them. And so, yes, it is different. And I'm allowing myself, like this, if you ask me, Dawn, right now, I am totally allowing myself to step back and just see whatever it is. So, the primary things that are consuming my time right now are the book, are the podcast, and then working with my clients that are there right now. But the permission that I want everyone to have is to not have it all figured out, to know that if this is not like the core message at the end of the day is if something is not working, you can step away and you can recreate it over and over and over again till it feels grounded and aligned, which is really hard to do as a perfectionist because like I need to have all the answers. And so uh, entrepreneurship is very humbling in its own way. So stepping back and recognizing this is working, this is not working. I need to ask for help here. Here, I just need to do it at this point. All of those things, which become really hard when we box ourselves into lack of creativity and imagination. And so I am trying to stay really open with all of that. And then reimagining your relationship with medicine. And so I don't know. Right now, I'm saying I'm on a sabbatical. I don't know what that's going to look like. And that's okay. And being comfortable saying that out loud and still the voice in your head telling you as an expert, you need to have it all figured out. Well, I really am trying to model humanity, as I say in my own TEDx talk. I don't have it all figured out. And it's a very much a journey, but I am getting a lot of joy. And then I know that with all of this comes an important part, and which is financial planning, of course. Like if somebody is thinking that, I don't know, I've lost my mind and I'm just gallivanting into meadows, and which sounds lovely to me. No, I had to look at spreadsheets and numbers and make it make sense before any of this happened. But once you make it make sense and you really challenge your needs versus your desires versus, you figure out maybe you don't need a lot of things that you think you need, especially because society expects you to have them because of perfectionism, because you need to look a certain way and carry that image. Once you sit back down and look at the numbers and look at the facts, you can allow room for more creativity and imagination.
As you were describing your current situation, all the things that you're doing and the things that you're not doing, the term that came up in my head was like imperfect journey. I feel like
Oh,
you really are embodying what you are trying to tell people to do. You are in this place where you just don't have it all figured out, like you said, and you are accepting it and you're okay with it. And you're like, well, I don't know how medicine is going to fit into my life. I know right now I'm taking a break from it. And I like that term, taking a break or taking a sabbatical. I mean, we've talked about sabbaticals multiple times on my podcast. I even had an expert on that has written a whole book about sabbaticals. So highly, highly recommend that idea. And I love that you are exploring and looking at different aspects of, how can I live my purpose? Because we also had Jordan Grummett on the podcast who wrote the book, The Purpose Code, and he talks about different methods for finding your purpose. And one of them is like spaghetti method, throw the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks, try different things and what actually ends up working. What is it where people perceive a need and really resonate with it, and just trying lots of different things at once is one way to do it.
absolutely. That's a great book.
Yes, yes, highly recommend that. And I will link in the show notes the conversation that I had with him about his book. So I'm excited for your book to come out. Is there any timeline that you are aware of for when it might be available?
Right now, we're in the book proposal phase, so we're really,
Oh, it's a long
really
process.
nascent. Yes,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it's so uncomfortable for me to say that out loud, right? I will just add here, Dawn, because when 2025 started, the ego part of me, the perfectionist, egotistical part of me was like, okay, we're gonna do this, this, this. That's how we do medicine, right? I'm gonna do this, this, this. I'm gonna
Checkbox.
checkbox, and I'm just going to move because I'm going to work hard and I'm going to just do it.
Mhm.
That's what I'm going to do. That's what you do as a physician. And then write about, and that included the book, like, yep, I'm going to write it, I'm going to publish it, and it's going to be done. And then in this whole process, the part where I say it was humbling was recognizing there is more here. I need to scratch the surface. I need to get deeper. I need to explore more. And so for me, that was extremely uncomfortable. And so I said, okay, well, if by the end of this year we have the big book proposal figured, that's pretty good starting point. And then we're going to move from there. And like, if you're working on a project and no longer it excites you, permission to pause over there and put it away as well. This continues to excite me in a different way. And so the way I look at it, like this is a longer from what I had thought Amna's going to write it and be done in 2025 to, I don't know, it might take a few years and I have to be okay with that. Or it might not. But allowing the clarity that there is no clarity when it comes to creativity often is okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. Amna, do you have any advice for listeners other than what you've already shared, which has been super valuable, about people who are stuck, feeling like they have to be perfect or they will not be loved, they will not be lauded, they will not be fulfilled? What is your advice to those people?
They're all my people because I'm one of them. And I've felt all of those things that you've mentioned on. In my TEDx talk, I introduced this concept that I've created called the courage bridge. And so to combat any of those feelings, you need a ton of courage. And so my advice is wherever you're at and you feel like the only option is to keep going right now, I invite you to first pause and have, that's the first part of the courage bridge, the courage to examine your intentions. And why are you doing what you're doing? What is that next degree, that next publication, that next paper, that next whatever financial achievement, business achievement? Why are you making sure that you're sticking your child in that specific school or college? Is it because you can sit with your friends and tell this to them? Or is it for their learning or for your growth? When you go to the salon or you go to your aesthetics appointment and you go for that painful skin procedure, is that because you want to look good? Or is it because you're trying to cover up shame and hate for your own body, which both I have had? So the question is, at the end of the day, what is your intention behind the actions that you're doing? And it takes tremendous courage to pause and to look into that. So that is the first thing I invite you to do. The second thing that I mentioned on that courage bridge is the courage to fail with self-compassion. Because if you're a high achiever, you're doing a lot. When you do a lot of things also don't go the right way. And so, that block that we all face, I feel like I can't move past this. A lot of times at that moment, you need to give yourself a lot of love. You need to be your own ally. That is actually a strategic business decision that you can make, a smart, objective decision, not trying to tear yourself down all the time. So those are the two main things that I will say. And the last thing is what Don and I have done this entire conversation, which is the courage to model your humanity. Because more you show up as a human being, the more other people will connect with you, the more other people will support you, the more other people will show up as they are. And that is what will move us forward, especially when we talk about how much socially prescribed perfectionism has spread into our society and culture. This really helps. If you've ever wondered why you like the influencers and the funny videos where there's a little bit of self-deprecation and they show you their mess and you instantly feel seen and connected, that's what it is. It's connection through showing our humanity.
I love that you said this. It's what I call being an authentic leader, because you are leading by example of being a human being and bringing the human aspects to whatever professional endeavors you're doing. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being on the show today, Amna. I really appreciate talking to you. I always love talking to you. Tell the listeners where they can find you if they want to connect with you or learn more about what you do.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for this opportunity. And the feelings are very mutual. This is an incredible platform that you've built, and you're doing such wonderful work. For anyone who's interested in connecting, My podcast would be a great starting point. It's called Success Reimagined with Amna Shabbir, MD. And you can find it at success-curated.com. And then I would invite everyone to go watch the TEDx talk. The title of the TEDx talk is Perfectionism Has a Solution. It's Not What You Think. And there's a lot more there that I cover in 10 minutes and 31 seconds. So those would be my two asks. And then I'm on all social media platforms, and you can just find me with my first and last name.
Well, we'll make sure to provide links in the show notes. So again, thank you so much for being here.